Good morning, good morning, good morning. What's up, everybody? How are y'all doing this morning? Oh, wait, do I have audio? Check, check. Oh, there we go. Sorry, didn't realize I had mute turned on. Good morning, good morning, good morning. What's up, everybody? Good morning. How are you all this morning? Let me get down here. Before you start making trade plans, do you mind a quick general discussion on playing gaps and gap fills? Tesla might be good, for example. It's got a lot of gaps. Sure, yeah, we can talk about that. I'm glad you asked, CD, and good morning. Glad you're here. Oh, let me get my screen sharing started. That would be good, wouldn't it? Let's get this going. For those watching on YouTube, you should see everything already. But for our Discord group, I've got one extra step I've got to take. I'm going to leave this where it is. Sorry, I thought about maybe trying to up the resolution or frame rate, but the fact that we're sending out this broadcast kind of to two different streams simultaneously, probably don't want to get too overkill with it. What's up, Navy Plum? Good morning. What's up, Sitaru? What's up, World Star? That's very tricky. World's Star kind of sounds like World Star. Uh, what's up, Drew? What's up, Andrew? Drew and Andrew. JD, Eagle Eye, Not Rich, P Funk, Not Rich. Let's see if we can't change that. PJ, Spitnik, Spitink. What's up? P Funk, Xander. Glad y'all are here. Give folks just another couple of minutes to kind of start filtering in, and then yeah, we can jump into a discussion on gaps. And CD said Tesla for gaps, so let's take a look at that. And I'm gonna hide everything actually for this. Hide all. So let's see where there are some existing. Now here's a question for you, CD, actually. Um, when you're looking at a chart and determining whether or not there's a gap there, are you including or accounting for extended hours, or are you looking at just regular trading hours? Just curious. I'm not saying one way is better than the other. Just regular trading hours. Okay. See, now I personally approach this a little bit differently, and so maybe that's a good place to start, but we can also take a look at, I mean, because you don't have to do everything my way, right? I am by no means the greatest trader that has ever existed, and you should emulate everything and anything I do exactly. I would never ever say that. I just don't. I hope I've got enough humility, or I'm humble enough to not go that far with in the world of an ego, I guess. But that being said, me personally, my personal approach to this is I like to account for extended trading hours. What's up, Trade Alerts? Good to have you here, buddy. Good morning to you. Let me get a quick some coffee going there. So going back to the conversation on gaps. So me personally, I like to include extended trading hours when I'm determining whether or not there's a gap that exists, right? Now, that being said, you can still look at what would be called like a fair value gap. And this is probably actually not a bad example of one. Actually, I'm going to need a different layout because I'm going to need to add drawings. If I've got everything hidden, actually, I'll do this other one. I just set up for some testing recently, so it shouldn't have anything on it. Except for a potential addition to Neptune that I'm still working on, but we won't mess with this yet. I'll leave that right now. All right, so Tesla. Now here's, oh God, how do I have drawings on this chart? Well, whatever's there I can delete. Now here's an example of a gap that I would say does still need to fill, and this is a kind of a weird or interesting thing with trading view. So me personally, right, I look at this as a gap, right? So my levels would be, for this gap, would be right about, this may not be to the penny, but right about 198.25 up to 199.49, there's a gap to fill there. Now, one thing you have to be mindful of in TradingView is every morning at 8 a.m., there's what I like to call a glitch candle, right? And so I don't pay attention to these as far as considering this a gap fill. So to me, this candle just after this 8 a.m. glitch candle, and again, if we could go to here, this is probably our 8 a.m. candle. I mean, you can almost spot it every time. It'll have a really crazy wick on both sides, right? So you kind of have to ignore that 8 a.m. candle. That's kind of when the real pre-market trading starts to kick in, and TradingView just kind of always has this really big range candle that bounces out. Now, that being said, sometimes this can find some interesting supports and resistances, but I would not consider this a gap fill, right? So ignoring this 8 a.m. candle, this gap is still open, right? This would be the bottom of the gap. This would be the top of the gap. So 198.25 up to 199.49. So we're still technically, I'd say this candle right here, it looks like we're still rejecting that gap entry, right? So this gap entry level, until we get over and above it, this is going to be really strong resistance, in my opinion. Until this gap fills, this is going to be really strong resistance, and this is going to be really strong resistance, right? So, you know, be very careful. In fact, I would say until you confirm a break into a gap, this would be a really great level and opportunity to play rejections, especially if you have some kind of confluence with it, right? Once the gap fills, again, we tend to, at the very least, see a short-term reversal, right? So, you know, what I would expect to see, right, is probably something like this. We reject, right? We don't really get the gap the first time. Maybe we create a higher low off of this previous resistance. Maybe we get enough momentum and volume going that we can get into the gap. I would also expect another rejection here, right? So I think this is, you know, potentially a good entry for puts, and this is definitely scale out heavy for calls. Get into calls once you confirm the break into the gap, but don't play for that gap until you're actually into it, right? Because if you start playing right here, you could be getting into calls, right, for something that's getting ready to reject, and you know, may need to pull back, find more liquidity, find more buyers, and get more momentum to really break up and into the gap. So that's kind of how I view gaps when they exist on the extended trading hours chart. Now, you're looking at a chart that looks like this, though, right? So you don't see this gap that we're already looking at for today. Whoops. Let me get rid of all this noise real quick. So you'll have gaps on your chart. Whoops. Like, let's say this, for example, right? This is a small little gap. Whoops. Yeah. So this guy is probably sitting right here. Let's take a look at this. What day is this? February 12th. So here's our gap down, right? Down to here. So if you're looking at this just regular trading hours, right, you're seeing a gap that needs to fill to the upside to 187.75 if we get over 185.20. And actually, here's another little gap right here that's opened up, right? But, and this is actually a really good example of how I would expect to see a gap. Well, no, not really. Well, it did kind of both times, really. But anyway, sorry. I'm kind of having a conversation with myself there for a second. So you've got a couple of gaps here on your chart, right? Looking at regular trading hours on Tuesday the 13th, and then again here on the 14th. So again, if we look at this from an extended trading hour standpoint, the gaps are in different spots. And this gap doesn't even exist right now. I like to account for that extended trading hours data because there's, you know, for the most part, there's actual trades taking place, right? And a lot of times that's where the whales are getting in and out of positions or setting things up for the day, whatever the case might be. So I think that there's valuable information in that extended trading hours data. And if there's data available and it's good data, you know, coming from kind of an IT background, I want to take advantage and use that data. So that's why I tend to gravitate toward extended trading hours versus regular trading hours. But if we are looking at this from a regular trading hours perspective, right, we've got, where did our gaps go? I lost it. We're back this way, aren't we? Yep. Right? Or no, we're further this way. Yeah, there we go. So this is the kind of behavior that I would expect to see, right? We create this gap right here, right? We break down into it, we fill it, and then we start to find support. We did dip quite a bit below, but notice we keep testing this as support, and that support starts to get cleaner and cleaner. So again, these gap levels, one thing I will say about them is they tend to be very helpful in spotting good support and resistance levels and using those, continuing to use those as support and resistance levels. And they tend to, one of two things happens in my opinion. They tend to either form at existing support resistance levels, so we may have already had these two levels on our chart. We just gapped up from a, let's say a 4-hour resistance up over a daily resistance here, for example. That's just a hypothetical. So, they could have formed at existing support resistance levels, or they'll create new support resistance levels if those don't already exist. And we see that really cleanly right here, right? Finding support and bouncing. Then what do? We break over, we back test, right, the top of the gap, and then we bounce higher. Same thing here, right? You notice that as we get pretty close to getting that gap fill, I'd say this is probably close enough to consider that a gap fill. Again, you got to kind of give yourself a reasonable margin of error around your levels sometimes. I'd say that's probably your good enough to be a gap fill move. You get that quick rejection. Ultimately, buyers do step back in and take it back up and run it back over. So hopefully, CD, that helps kind of the general discussion on gaps. But if you have any other questions, feel free to shoot me a DM or ask here in the chat, and I'll be happy to kind of cover that for you. But let's get to the market and our trade plans and what's going on with all that. So looking at ES from a futures perspective, we have put in a new, relatively small 4-hour supply zone in here. We did break things down a little bit. Neptune is now finding those rejections the way that it should, so not too surprised to see us getting resistance, making a lower high there. And we are breaking down out of this channel, so things are starting to look a little bit more, contentious, I should say, for the bulls, and they're going to really need to step in and maybe try to establish a new trend, perhaps between this low and this low that we're trying to bounce off of here. But we'll keep an eye on that. Again, right now we're seeing some signs of the strong bullish momentum starting to fade. So be a little bit careful just automatically rushing in to buy the dip. And certainly I would say if ES starts to get up and testing in this range between 50.1725 and 50.30, that's probably not a bad place to start to look to either put some hedge positions in place with some puts, or just straight up play some puts and try to essentially short those rips. Again, I would still be small with that. I mean, overall, we're still kind of on a strong upward trend. Let's take a look at this on the hourly as well, just to kind of get another perspective on things. We are pulling up into that 333 SMA. These are still overall trending to the upside, but they're starting to flatten out a little bit, right? So we are getting some short signals here on higher time frames. The trend ribbon, which is really kind of your more tight tracing of buy and sell pressure here on Neptune, overhead kind of continuing to push us to the downside. And we did just flip the support flag that we tried to hold for a little bit there down to the downside. So yeah, I mean, if we start to lose this 333 SMA, I'd be very intrigued to see if this demand zone holds on another test. So we'll keep an eye on that. Overall, I'd say just be careful at this point. Be ready to play, go in either direction. And again, I'd say up in this range between 50.1725 and 50.30. With that supply zone there, hourly 200 SMA overhead. Neptune overall pretty bearish at the moment. I think not a bad zone to look to either load hedges or just straight up play for potential rejection to the downside. All right, so let's take a look at our member selected tickers from over the weekend, or over the long weekend, I should say. I just posted these yesterday, so this is going to be our first day to try to do anything with them. Conveniently, we happen to have a live stream today, so we can kind of talk through these and make sure that you guys are totally prepared before we get into doing some new trade plans. Damn, Navy Plum, you called me out. You're absolutely right. I forgot to do that SMCI trade plan and level. So I will try to take a look at that today, and I'll post something in the watch list, and I'll mention it in the chat. I'll even try to send you a DM about it. Again, for Palantir was one of the top tickers. Somebody really wanted to see it. I think one person used all 3 of their votes on just PLTR. So this one, obviously still nothing going on here. So just keep your eyes on it. Definitely some confluence of resistance building up overhead here, but before we get to the call side of things, we'll have broken through all of that. But definitely an interesting area to look for possible rejections between 2440 and 2477 on PLTR. So yeah, so one person voted for it all 3 times. So I mean, what can I do? There was a couple other people that voted for it as well. So nothing really happening on this one yet. Definitely looks a bit bearish here on the 15-minute. Let's check the hourly real quick as well. Well, this is kind of interesting. We're holding up right where we should be. So, but again, we still have this trend ribbon overhead. It kind of adds confluence, adds, I would say, confirmation that until we break over 2477, there's still potential for rejections. Really interesting potential buying opportunity here, though, at 2402. Again, I don't say this a lot, and I would certainly start very small if you did try this, but Palantir could be as long as we hold 2402 going into the open, could be a buy at open, some calls, give yourself some time in case it doesn't hold. And again, be very careful, start very small. I personally don't like to get into trades for the first 15 minutes of the day, generally speaking, unless there's something I just really see and like. This is, a little bit of a conflicted setup, but this is a really strong confluence, and we have held this level very nicely here recently. So 2402 shares or calls, and I would put your stop loss though at the put entry level 2315. So I mean, you've got to have a defined amount of risk if you're going to take a overall risky entry based on the timing of the day and getting it close to open. But again, as long as 2402 holds, I kind of like this for a dip buy entry. So just my 2 cents on that. Microsoft was also on the list. I did note we are developing a pretty decent downtrend here. We continue to reject that. That's got some confluence right around here at 404.72, but we also have another confluence over there at 407.09, our call entry level. So definitely opportunities for rejections in this range until we break up over 407.09, and even then I'd scale out pretty firmly there at PT1. You'll note that here on the hourly, we've got the 200 SMA and the key final heaviest selling pressure on Neptune lined up exactly with that 409.81 level. Definitely really good opportunity for a rejection there. So if you do wind up getting into calls on this break, make sure you scale out heavy and even start scaling out a little bit early as you head up toward 409.81 versus kind of waiting to see if it rejects, because there's a, I'd say higher than usual probability that that 409.81 rejects. Little dip below our put entry level, but so far right back in the middle of the range. So keep your eyes on Microsoft. The trade plan is there for you in the options watch list. AMD was our final member selected ticker from the plans that I posted yesterday. We did just barely flip this flag. I get a little bit skeptical of these, but we are perfectly rejecting almost the heavy selling pressure on the trend ribbon. We're below both moving averages right here with some confluence around this 173.14. So really, 173.14 up to 174.29 right now, looking like good rejection entry opportunities. And AMD may give us a break to the downside and start catching some of these price targets below us here. Last week, we took a look at Wayfair. This was on one of our live stream tickers on Thursday. So this is our first opportunity to circle back to these and start reviewing them. Nothing to see here really on Wayfair. It's playing out pretty much as we would expect it to. Kind of surprised it didn't get some more legs, although I'm not sure what time frame. Generally, I would expect it to be on the hourly, but I wouldn't have put a trend line in with that being a pretty clear confirmed break. So maybe this is even higher time frame, or maybe I just didn't don't know what the hell I was thinking when I drew that. Let's take a look at this real quick because I am curious what I was trying to catch here and why it's off. Definitely is a little bit of a downtrend moving us. Let's see. Should be right about there. I guess maybe I was pointing out that we already broke over it, but maybe this trend is sitting a little bit more like this. Yeah, maybe it was a regular trading hours trend line. Yeah, that could have been. Yeah, good call. I think maybe that's what I was looking at. Although this looks, let's see. That looks a little better. I think that probably also can catch that candle. Yeah, I think it probably sits a little bit more like that. So yeah, you're right, Chris. I think I was looking at regular trading hours on Wayfair. Good catch. So potentially, let's take a look at this extended trading hours on. Yeah, because this is when I think it does print those little weird glitch candles. Not glitch candles like the 8 a.m. one, but like stuff like this where you have these little dash marks. I tend to avoid. That's the one time where I avoid extended trading hours because that can throw you off a little bit. So looking at this kind of adjusted, slightly adjusted trend line, we're actually rejecting it pretty cleanly here pre-market. Yeah, that looks like a much better, more sensible trend line on regular trading hours. Probably not too different. Yeah, we're on the extended hours chart, but yeah, so I'd be looking for a break over 53.87, so potential earlier entry now that we've had kind of this pre-market info, and I've correctly, I think, adjusted that trend line. So potential entry, slightly earlier entry here from what we looked at last week if we break over 53.87, but overall, I think the better confirmations over 57.45. I wouldn't change much there. Cold was another one that we did on Thursday. This one gave us a little bit of a fake out to the upside. Let me get my long short thing fixed up here. So we did this one that day. This was over there too. The one thing that has worked out really nicely with this trade plan, I did look at this a little bit before we started the live stream. You know, that resistance overall held pretty well, but that's a pretty decently convincing break there. So wouldn't have blamed anybody for getting into calls, but our stop loss average down held perfectly. Now we're back up retesting that call entry level and even trying to push over it here this morning. So I hope if you took this entry here, you stuck to the plan, average down on that nice bounce there. This should put you back in break even or better probably at open this morning, and potentially going to try to break out, flip this selling pressure to buyers and push up for 187.28. So cold trade plan looks like it might actually start to move today. Because we do have this confluence overhead with the selling pressure on Neptune. That'll all roll over if we break over the call entry level at this point. So, you know, again, we planned this back here, but Neptune very nicely catching the key resistance there and confirming that that's where the sellers are at right now. So looking to break back over this 200, 333 SMA, both trended up, finally caught up with the price action. So we probably just needed to get a little bit of pullback into this buying pressure. It was probably a little bit overextended for too long. Slight sideways consolidation, perhaps prepping for another leg up here is what it looks like to me on cold. And then last but not least, Micron. We did this one last Thursday. Friday gave us the breakdown below our put entry level, ran straight down to PT1, bounced up back into the sellers here on Neptune, pushed back down for the next leg down. This is ultimate, like really great downside entry opportunity here from a Neptune perspective. Here we are testing PT2 for the downside, so continuing to push down, trying to flip over that ribbon right now, but overall it's still looking like pressure for the most part and bearish flag just overhead. So certainly if you're in this one, scale some out at open, move your stops up to PT1. Congrats, should be doing pretty well on this. Why do I have AMD up here a second time? I don't know. This is from when we looked at Tesla. All right, so let's get to some new trade plans. I know that was a lot to cover there before we got into some new trade plans, but overall, we talked about a lot of really good setups this morning as it is. So make sure you go back to the watch list, check those trading plans, and get ready to execute, make some money. All right. So what were our requests this morning? Let's get back to that. Well, let's take a look at SMCI real quick. What is that doing? I am curious. Maybe we can just do it right now, maybe, Plum, since I've neglected to do it. Well, that's interesting. So I did these fib extensions. I don't know when. Maybe I left them on the chart. Nah, doesn't look like it. Did these fib extensions, I'm guessing, probably sometime around January. Overall, they've played out pretty well for predicting, right, support resistance levels that have never ever been tested before. And here we are at the final extension from that last set of fib extensions, 761.37, catching that bounce. I mean, I don't know how I could predict an untested level any closer than that, especially that far removed from where we were projecting from. So, pat myself on the back a little bit for these fib extensions on SMCI. But that being said, we've got some price action now. We've had some time. Let's see if we can't find some support and resistance levels. We may not be able to. It's questionable. It's not spent much time up here. Yeah, did not expect to find anything on the weekly chart. Not surprised there. This is an interesting double top, though, that it broke out over. If it ever, which I don't know if it ever, do I have drawings turned off? I do. But maybe I already have a level there. Okay, let's check that out again. Sorry, just looking at this weekly chart. There is a level already there. I was a little bit low, I guess, when I was drawing it. I was maybe zoomed out or something. Not sure why these two red levels here really stacked up like that. Oh, well, I was probably just drawing them a second ago and they were turned off. That's what it was. So I did have one close to 360.50. I think that was probably a part of that fib extension set that we drew. But I think this is the real key level. I will keep an eye on this. I don't want to confuse myself with what it is, though. That's what I'll do with that level. Okay. So this is also going to be an interesting one to mark off. We'll keep an eye on that. Don't think we'll need it. All right. So let's see here. Fib extension holding up well there. Again, I'm not really anticipating we're going to find a whole lot. This fib extension was pretty close, but I think this level is just a little bit, actual level is just a little bit lower. I think it sits more like right there. Gonna have to use kind of minimal data here to pick our support and resistance levels, but kind of just is what it is with SMCI. All right, this is also an interesting little flip right here that we want to keep an eye on. All right, I think that does it for the daily levels. Again, not surprised, not expecting to find a whole lot on these higher time frames. Yeah, nothing to really work with there. There's something here though. 4-hour level in there. This is not confirmed as anything yet, but I want to take I don't lose sight of that. Take another look at that. And that's kind of interesting, although I'm probably getting outside of a range we're going to even need to be looking at, so yeah, I think we're probably done on the 4-hour chart. Doubt we're going to change much here on the 2-hour. Well, helps a little bit. I think there's something worth noting. Again, minimal price action. There and here. Yeah, I'm not really too convinced by much else. Well, no, I take that back. There's something there. All right, let's get to the hourly chart. I have a feeling this is probably where we're going to start to see what's what. Again, this is kind of using a reasonable margin of error on either side of that level. Could be something there. Yeah, it's iffy, but I think there's enough to go off of there. This is, I'm interested by these levels, but I'm not. This one and this one. I don't know if they're going to be worth much. This level checks out now, which is kind of what I was expecting to see. What else do we have? I don't know. We might need to look at the 30-minute chart. Well, this is also iffy. There could be something here. We'll take a look at it. And see if we can't get some kind of confirmation on that. Interesting little mini gap here. That pre-market bounce. I think that's worth noting and calling an hourly level. Again, minimal data on that. That's how everything's going to be on this chart for right now. Okay. I think that's pretty decent, actually. So, let's see what the indicators say. Where do we have some confluences? All right, let's take a look at this one more. Okay, so this kind of stacks up to what I was looking at, where I was thinking about trying as possible entry. This is, I mean, definitely keep it small. This is risky business to the upside. So you have been warned. Over that, yeah, I think it takes a shot at that. I mean, it could really, especially with it being SMCI, it could really get some legs over that 936.26 level. So we're going to stretch a little bit to really kind of close in this fair value gap between this candle and this candle. That is a big sell imbalance. I think we could slice right back through to the upside, but we have to break through PT1 first. So keep it very small, scale out. I would say scale out everything but one contract at PT1. Just keep moving your stops up on that last contract and see if it can't stretch for the third price target. That's how I'd play this. Stop loss average down, I think smartly would be right here at 803.39. All right, to the downside, where does that start to become intriguing? Let's go back to that chart real quick. I don't want to lose sight of that. Yeah, that's kind of about where I was looking. So I have a feeling as we make our way down, right, eventually this 200 is going to match up with the 746.11 level, creating a confluence below which, if we break, I think downside does start to get interesting. There is a level, I think, right here that I might have missed. I think, yeah, should be, might be. I don't know, actually. We may have to use the other level that I was looking at. I think our first price target is really, well, I don't know, because that's, the yellow level is super iffy. I mean, it's, Yeah, you know what? I'm going to say go for 691.61. I could be wrong about this. We may find support at 714.39 off that one rejection as resistance, but that is thin at best to be, you know, put much weight into. This is an interesting level right here, actually, that I think is probably a smart, even though we are using the 30-minute chart, kind of have to deviate from the rules a little bit. Typically, I wouldn't chart 30-minute levels, but we just don't have a ton of price action to work with. So, but I do think that downside becomes problematic if we break below and somehow, before we hit first price target, bounce back over 791.46. That could become problems for continuing to hold. So I think that's a smart stop loss level. Second price target, I think this is just going to be 1, 2, 3. I mean, because we don't have much else to go off of on these downside levels. So this is the SMCI trade plan that I meant to do yesterday. I just forgot about. My apologies. Whoops. Let's give ourselves some more chart real estate here. So this is what we're looking at for SMCI. Again, be very careful. And honestly, this is probably, I don't know what the IV is on these contracts off the top of my head, but the other thing I'd say is these contracts are going to be juiced. I could tell without even looking. So you are going to overpay to trade options on this because of the implied volatility. Another reason to go very small, or probably just wait for things to kind of settle out on this one before you go chasing anything crazy on it. But here's the trade plan since you asked for it. All right, so what we're looking for here on SMCI is a break over 834.08. That should give us a first price target that you should scale out heavily at, up at 897.50. Second price target 936.26. Final price target 1032.17 with a stop loss average down at 803.39. To the downside, we're looking for a break below, what was that, 746.11. That should give us a first price target at 691.61, then 660.08, right? Yep. And then 631.19 with a stop loss average down at 770.57. Sorry, these price levels got scrunched together over there. It's hard to see what was what. So that is your SMCI trade plan. I hope that does it. Yeah, no, that's definitely worth noting. Chris, with the FOMC tomorrow at 2 p.m. I should have thought to mention that, but been covering a lot this morning already. All right, so that was SMCI. Let's see. We did take a look at PLTR for Magic Mix, Lift, and Frog. Not familiar with, what is Frog? J Frog Limited? Tech Services. Never heard of Frog. Had ER recently. We are only 2 days removed from that. Today would be day 3 technically. Relatively low volume now. Is this like all-time high status right now? Relatively young ticker. September 2020. Oh shit, it's 9:10. Damn, sorry, I didn't realize how much time I was spending on some of this stuff, guys. Let me see if I can, I don't think I have enough time to put together this Frog trade plan, unfortunately, and take a quick look at Lyft. The only thing I'll say about Lyft, I would long the shit out of it over 2144. I will say that. Not going to have time to put together a full trade plan, but yeah, you could see a big move over 2144 on Lyft. So keep an eye on that level for a break to the upside. Not going to be a fully fledged trade plan, but over 21.44, I would definitely play upside, probably with a stop loss right in this neck of the woods. Yeah, that's about what I was looking at. 20, just call it 20 flat to make it easy. I mean, there's a potential little bit of resistance right here at 23.70, but over that, I think it's shooting for like 30s. So yeah, keep an eye on this one. Kind of gets this up a little bit. Not going to be a fully fledged trade plan, both sides covered, all that sort of stuff, but you do have one price target that you'll probably want to take some profit at, and then over that, she flies, I think. It's a little brighter. There is maybe one more price target, or one more stop. It's probably sitting a little bit more like that. Yeah, it could be anywhere up in that range. Actually, it could be a little bit more like 31.40. Yeah, that checks out. So 31.40. I think it takes a run for that, especially over 23.62, but start scaling it over 21.44. That would be my suggestion with a stop loss right there on lift. This one could make some moves. Make sure you give yourself plenty of time, though. It's not going to fly straight up, stairs up, elevator down, right? So make sure that you keep that in mind. Whoops, wrong position. That's what I was trying to grab. So not really a full trade plan, but a couple targets, entry, and a stop for a potential upside move for lift. It's not the hourly chart real quick before I post it. All right, so kind of quick look. All right, so with that, folks, I do need to go get the SPY plan put together and posted in the watch list for you guys. That is coming at you here, hopefully within the next 10-ish minutes or so. So I want to thank you guys so much for joining me this morning. Hopefully you guys found this educational, enlightening, and profitable. Remember, as we always say here on the FOMO live stream, plan your trades and trade your plans. We will be back Thursday morning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I hope you guys will come back for that. I will see you guys then, and in the chats in the meantime, go out there, get some green, have a great day. Talk to y'all soon.